In this video, we are going to learn how to graph an inequality, and we're not going to graph it on a coordinate plane. We're going to put it on a number line. Now, the way you put an inequality on a number line is actually pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at 636. This is lesson 6.1.4 in CC2. The diagram at right shows three possible ways to represent inequality statements. You can use a graph, which is a number line. You can use words, or you can use symbols. This is an example of using a symbol to show an inequality. Remember, an inequality is using the less than, greater than, or the less than or equal to, greater than or equal to symbols. When we talk about inequalities, sometimes we also are talking about the equal sign, but that's just because sometimes the equal sign goes between, the left and the right side. So when we have something that looks like this, we're showing an inequality using symbols. So that is the symbol representation. So we need to write this as a graph and as words. Well, let's talk about showing it as words. So this means that x is less than negative 1 and a half. So that takes a little while to write out, but showing that inequality as words would mean x is less than negative 1 and a half. Now, if I put a little line underneath this less than sign, it would turn the words into x is less than or equal to less than or equal to negative 1 and a half. So when you put a little line underneath the inequality symbol, it turns it, it adds in that or equal to feature. So those are how you would represent, that is how you would represent this in words. Now let's talk about a graph. And when we say a graph, we're not talking about a graph like on a coordinate plane. Okay, we're not talking about that. We are talking about, at this level, we're talking about how to represent it on a number line. So when we are setting up a number line, we're going to draw a line with arrows on either side. Then we're going to draw a middle tick mark. And when we were learning how to make number lines in 6th grade, we would put a 0 in the middle, and then 1, 2, 3, and then on the other side, -1, -2, -3. That's typically how we would make a number line, but we're not going to make number lines the same way when we're dealing with inequalities. This time, we'll draw a line, we'll have arrows on either side, and in the middle, I recommend that you put the number that's represented in the inequality. In this case, it's negative 1 and a half. And you might want to add some other numbers on either side. For example, you might want to say this is -1 and this is -2, just so that you can get a sense of where this number line is going to the right and where it's going to the left. And then what you're going to do after you've labeled your number line a little bit, you don't have to go too excessive with it, is you're going to draw your dot or your point. Now, there are two types of points you can make. When it is just the alligator mouth or the inequality symbol with no equal or equal to sign underneath it, it's going to be an open circle. So this is going to be an open circle. So I will put an open circle on the number line where -1 and a half is. If this was less than or equal to, it would be a closed circle. So instead of an open circle like this, I would fill it in to say that, yes, it is -1 and a half and whatever numbers come before or after it, okay? So that's the second step. The first step is to draw the number line and label it. The second step is to put your point either open or closed. And then the third step oh, this is open. is to shade in the line. And this is where it gets a little tricky because you're shading on top of a line. You have to kind of shade a little darker than the line to make sure that it's clear, okay? So we are talking about all numbers. X could be any number less than -1.5. So any number less than -1.5 is going to be these numbers here. And I'm using red just so you all can see very clearly what I'm shading in. And I'm actually going to draw an arrowhead there as well, showing that X is any number less than -1.5. Okay. Now, if the sign was changed to this, then I would draw my arrow obviously in the other direction. So there are 3 steps when you're graphing an inequality at this point. The first step is to draw the number line. The second step, I'm going to say draw / label line. The second step is to draw closed or open dot. And then the third step is to shade arrow in right. Well, I'm not going to say right because it's not always going to go to the right, in correct direction. Now, let's go ahead and do part C. That way we can work, and we'll do B as well. That way we can work backwards and get some more practice with this. So let's go ahead and take a look at B. X is greater than or equal to 2. So that already has the words. So now let's go ahead and do the symbols. X is greater than or equal to 2. If X is greater than 2, the alligator is going to want to eat the side that is greater than, okay? That's one way that you can remember which side or which way the inequality symbol faces. So X is greater than or equal to 2. So I'm going to also put a line underneath that. That means that X could be 2, or it could be any number greater than 2. So now that we have shown it in words and symbols, let's go ahead and graph it with a number line. Step 1, I'm going to draw my number line and label it. I don't have to go too crazy with it, but I'll label a few numbers, okay? Step 2 is I'm going to draw my open or closed circle. Because this has an equal to sign on it, I am going to draw a closed circle showing that it includes 2. And then X is going to be any number greater than 2. So my arrow is going to be shaded in the greater than direction. And I'll draw the arrowhead there. Great. Now taking a look at part C. In part C, I already have the graph, but I need the words and the symbols. Well, in this case, for the symbols, I know that I have X and I have 2 because the dot is on the number 2, okay? The dot is closed, so I know I'm going to have an equals to sign underneath the inequality symbol. And then it looks like the X is shaded going this way. So that means that X is going to be less than or equal to 2. X wouldn't be greater than. If X was greater than 2 or equal to 2, it would be going this way, but it's going the other way. So it is 2, and maybe it's 2 or all numbers less than 2, okay? All right, now in terms of writing that, I would say X in words, because we have the symbols now. Writing it in words, I would say X is less than or equal to 2, like that. And that is how you work with inequalities, represent inequalities in terms of words, symbols, and graphs at this point in 7th grade math.